it almost seems like having an SDE on one hand would be just a wonderful experience, but on the other hand, it would almost be heartbreaking. So why do you suppose somebody would want to have an SDE or not want to have one?
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that. And that, that what you're talking about, Lisa, we see that a lot with NDEers. They come back and they're disappointed that they have to come back and live this life. Shared death experiencers, not so much, because they have a sense that their loved one who's died is alive and well somewhere. And they also report that they feel, well, they use the term no. It's very unequivocal. They say, I know I'll see my loved one again. And they also come back with kind of a deeper understanding for how a human life fits in this larger context of living. If you see, most of our experiencers will say that the SDE let them know that there's a larger, more ultimate reality than this human life. And that gives them a great deal of confidence and impetus to basically live with more purpose in this life. So they come back with a greater sense of purpose and meaning. Really get about it. I should also say that they have a real reduction, if not elimination, in fear of death. So it gives them a great deal of peace to be here. So we don't have a lot of people saying, I want to go be with my loved one right now. In some cases we do. Certainly for parents who have lost children, this is what we see, that they really miss them. But for those who have SDEs, they have what we refer to as continuing bonds. And that means that the SDE gives them a sense that they are still in relationship to their departed child. The SDE, there's a wonderful group, Helping Parents Heal, who really use these end-of-life experiences and the SDE to comfort their bereaved parents, and these who have lost children, or sons and daughters. So yeah. And the other thing I should just say is that the SDE, in our research, we found that the experiencers, their grief is quite different than the grief of someone who doesn't have this type of experience. It's not that they don't miss the loved one. It's not that they don't have the heartbreak of it, but it's held in a larger context. The death seems to fit in as a natural part of life that they don't argue with. They've really been touched in a deep way about the order and the vast kind of love of the universe, and they trust that. Everything they say, I miss him or her, but it's all okay. I know it's all okay. And so, it's for people who haven't had these types of experience, that's a tough one to translate. It's, these experiences are ineffable. And so yeah.
Right. Now, you mentioned earlier that some people seem to be more prone toward having this kind of experience. Do you have to have a certain kind of intuition, a personality type? How do you define why some people have SDEs and others do not?
Yes, it's a great question, and one that mystifies us. I can say, if we take a half step backwards and say, this is what our research tells us about who has these. First of all, the relationship is quintessential. Most of our cases, although not all, most of them have a strong bond with the person dying. So relationship is central. And then again, I will say, we do have people that seem to be just adepts at this. So there's some hospice workers, ICU nurses and such, that they just seem to have their groove to this. They're attuned to it, and they will talk about having, multiple SDEs. So that's one piece. Now, I will say, there's something else. I have a working hypothesis that it's the person dying who initiates it. We don't have the research, and I doubt we would ever have the research to substantiate that, based on rigorous scientific methods, because this, that happens in the unseen world. But it seems like there's some sort of invitation by the dying to the SDE experiencer, mostly the surviving loved ones. So that's something to keep in mind. But we also notice this: a lot of our experiencers, 67% out of our 106 that we had, 107 that we had in our study, had some sort of a mindfulness practice. Now that means it could be meditation, it could be prayer, it could be yoga, it can be walking in nature, some sort of practice that slows one down, that affords one to be in a receptive, maybe a state of attunement with what's going on around them. That seems to be what we see, this type of ability to be receptive and open. And certainly along with that openness is an acceptance of death. If you can be, open to death and not in a state of contraction and resistance, we see that as another conductor of the shared death experience. Last piece I would say about this is these experiences tend to happen more in what I would call more natural home settings. The more medicalized, there's more technology, there's more interruption, there's more, light is harder. We see, we're actually just running the data on this right now about where these take place, but we're seeing probably in our data somewhere to 2/3, maybe as high as 80% are in non-medical settings. So that says that's a bit about what we think. Those are the conditions. But you asked us a specific question, Lisa, about the people, about these SDE experiencers. So I already said 41% of our research participants had more than one. And, I think that there, in addition to the things that I've brought out there, I do think if you've had experiences, there's different names for them: extraordinary spiritual experiences, spiritually transformative experiences, paranormal experiences. Depending on your discipline, they're called different things. Mystical experiences, more traditional spiritual religious people will just straight mystical experiences, things that stretch you beyond the mundane, and certainly a near-death experience would be what we call a gateway experience. That means it would open yourself to the SDE. So yeah, that's kind of what we know about how these happen. And once again, I say that all very humbly. We're learning. We're at the front end of what we hope and anticipate will be a very concerted effort to understand why these happen, because they're so meaningful.
Thanks for listening. Check out Castle Gate, a novel based on my own ancestral healing journey, at lisabonis.com. In 1921, 4 men set off from Scotland to the United States. Will Garrock, his brother Pete, his son Willie, and his nephew Thomas, all coal miners. They left behind the miners' rows and the nationwide mining strike with its soup kitchens. Their destination was Castlegate, Utah, where they had kin to welcome them before sending for their wives and children. They prospered in America, working in one of the finest mines in Utah. Until that tragic day, March 8th, 1924. Disaster struck. 3 explosions, trapping 171 men inside. Rescue crews worked tirelessly for days, but sadly, they could not save a soul. Women were widowed and children were orphaned, and some never recovered from their broken hearts. Castlegate is the true and tragic saga of a Scottish family whose dreams of finding their fortunes in the bountiful coal mines of Castlegate, Utah during the Prohibition era explode in one of the most devastating mine disasters in American history. Learn more at lisabonis.com.